One thing that I know, and I've received a lot of inquiries about, both from the public and other members of the business community, is COVID's impact on the criminal justice system. And one of the ways we thought to demonstrate this to you is to give you a sense of the reduction in the number of felony cases that have occurred throughout 2020. We have seen relatively flat numbers, and there's not been a significant decline in the number of felony cases that have been referred to the office. But as you can see, the number of felony cases that have been initiated, those are cases that have been formally started by my office, we are down about 35%. We're operating at about 65% capacity. In other words, we are about 1,300 felonies below what we would expect based on our recent historical average. Another way of thinking about this, and it actually provides a useful way for examining a certain policy proposal advanced by the judiciary, which I have strongly opposed, and I've strongly opposed a number of the sort of policy initiatives. So this probably falls into that same category. Members of the chamber will remember from last year and the year before a sustained attempt by the district court to reduce this office's access to the grand jury. It is something like the case management order that has only frankly been applied in Bernalillo County. And my position on this has been very clear that for a community that has seen sustained and frankly historically abnormal levels of violent crime, reducing our access to the grand jury imposes a massive resource burden on police officers and on our prosecutors. In order to understand that, the way to think about it is there's two ways to initiate a felony case in New Mexico. One is to go to a full preliminary hearing. One is to go through a grand jury. They end up with exactly the same outcome if there's a finding of probable cause. The difference is a grand jury usually takes 15 or 20 minutes and usually requires the participation of one or two witnesses. They almost never fail to occur, and they certainly don't fail to occur because the defendant himself or herself has decided not to show up to court. Under our current rules, preliminary hearings in New Mexico are full evidentiary hearings, which means they are very lengthy, they're very resource intensive, and if any one of the participants, including the defendant himself, doesn't appear, we can't launch the case. And so one of the sort of the unrecognized and unplanned benefits of this impact of COVID on our system is to get a real-time view of what our system looks like if you completely eliminate the grand jury, as we did in March in this jurisdiction. And I agree with that decision for public health reasons. I think it makes sense to not convene the grand jury because there were concerns about safety, and the participants in the grand jury themselves made it very plain to the leaders in the criminal justice system that they didn't feel entirely safe in that process. But, and this is the important point for the chamber and for members of the community, when we are on the other side of the pandemic, when we have a vaccine that is widely available, and when the criminal justice system starts to function as it should, one of the things that you will see from my office is a request to the district court and the New Mexico Supreme Court to substantially increase, not just return our normal access to the grand jury, but to actually increase the available grand jury panels so that we can start digging out of this hole. Because as you can probably imagine, I still have to deal with these 1,300 felonies. If we're gonna make an impact on public safety, I have to have an efficient way to initiate felony cases. And I can imagine that in the late spring and summer, when things hopefully start turning back to normal, we're going to make a sustained effort to get our access to the grand jury back so that we can make up this difference.